Hey y'all, and welcome to this week's From the Vault episode from the Magdalen House podcast. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization based in Dallas, Texas, and known affectionately by many as Maggies. Every first and third Wednesday, we bring you a new release. In our From the Vault episodes, we share podcast releases from our 3 different podcast series: Recover Ed, Recovered, Interviews with Alcoholics, and Hope for the Family. Our podcasts aim to connect, inspire, and educate alcoholics, loved ones, and the community to the Magdalen House and the services we offer. We are so glad that you're here. Thanks for listening.
All right. Good morning, podcast listeners, Next Step participants, and Next Step graduates. My name is Stephanie Crawford, and I'm the program manager here of Next Step, as well as the host of this podcast. And so today we are going to be doing our series, Studying the Steps. Now, in this series, we bring on recovered alcoholic women to share their personal experience with the Big Book, and knowledge of the Big Book to present on a specific step or steps. So today we are going to have our volunteer coordinator on, Kelly Williams, and she is going to talk to us all about Step 12. So I know you all are in for a treat. She is a cutest dynamic speaker with lots of passion and energy for the program. And so make sure you have your notebook, your Big Book, a highlighter. Who knows where this is going to go? I'm super excited to be here, and I'm going to hand it over to Miss Kelly Williams.
Okie dokie. Hi, guys. My name's Kelly. I'm a grateful recovered alcoholic. My sobriety date is March 29th of 2019. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. And I never thought that would be possible. I always say that whenever I speak, just because I never thought that I'd be able to have any amount of time in sobriety. And so I'm really grateful that these steps exist and that somebody was practicing these principles in their daily life and was able to carry the message to me, because without that, I would not be here, probably on this planet. So I am really grateful that someone carried the message to me. So I'm talking about step 12 today, which is a step that I personally did not think that I would have to do going into this program. I had and still have some pretty bad anxiety. And so I thought that my sponsor would make an exception for me, and, I wouldn't have to go talk to other drunks. But then at around 2 months sober, I think maybe a little bit before that, she told me to start raising my hand and saying I was available for sponsorship. And I'm like, are you kidding? Like, do you know me at all? Because I don't think I can do that. But I was so desperate going into this that I just did what she told me to do, even though at that point in my sobriety, I was still so fresh. I felt like I was not equipped to take anyone through the steps. But that was, a complete lie, because I was equipped to take someone through the steps. I had worked the steps. And all that's required of me to carry the message to other alcoholics is, I had a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps. And I was practicing those principles in all my affairs. So step 12 says, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. So one of the things that, I didn't understand this step at all, really. I didn't really understand a lot of the steps going through them. I just did them. I just did what my sponsor told me to do. But this 12th step, I was really confused about, because number one, I went into this just to stop drinking, right? I thought that sobriety was the goal, right? But this is telling me that it's not. It's having had a spiritual awakening. And it doesn't say having, had some time of sobriety as a result of these steps. We tried to carry this message to alcoholics. It's having had a spiritual awakening. And that really confused me because, I grew up in the church and in a religious family, and I knew about spirituality and having spiritual experiences and stuff like that. But I felt when I got to this step that I hadn't had one. I thought what was supposed to happen was I would have like this burning bush moment or like a come to Jesus moment or something like that. And I hadn't experienced something like that. And so thankfully in the big book, in the very back of the big book, in the appendices, it talks about what a spiritual experience is. And I'm really grateful that that was added in there because it clarified so much for me. Some people I know, when they go through the steps, they do have like this, like really clarifying moment where, their perspective is suddenly changed and like it's a magical experience. But for me, that change was much more gradual and I didn't even notice when it happened. And so it says spiritual experience. Hold on, I'm going to find it. Okay, so it says among our this is on page 567 if you have a 4th edition. Among our rapidly growing membership of thousands of alcoholics, such transformations, though frequent, are by no means the rule. And that's talking about like those sudden spiritual experiences. Most of our experiences are what the psychologist William James calls the educational variety because they develop slowly over a period of time. Quite often, friends of the newcomer are aware of the difference long before he is himself. He finally realizes that he has undergone a profound alteration in his reaction to life, that such a change could hardly have been brought about by himself alone. What often takes place in a few months could seldom have been accomplished by years of self-discipline. And it goes on to talk a little bit more about the spiritual experience and a spiritual awakening. But I found that my spiritual awakening was definitely more along the lines of like an educational experience, because the longer I practiced these steps, the more I went through the steps, the more my eyes were opened and the more my perspective on life changed. And so I am really grateful that they added that spiritual experience in there because I thought I was missing something. And it says that I had to have a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps, but from what my little understanding of what a spiritual awakening was, I felt like I was, that's one of the reasons why I felt I wasn't equipped to carry the message. But after I learned more about what a spiritual awakening was, then I realized, oh, okay, my perspective on life has changed. I can do this. So it also says that it is the result of these steps. It is the result of these steps. Like, this is my goal in doing these steps. It's not to stop drinking, it's not to mend my relationships. It's not to fix my financial problems. My goal is to have a spiritual awakening. And let's see, in practicing these principles in all our affairs, I can't carry the message if I'm not practicing these principles in all my affairs. Because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to carry the message about how I had my spiritual awakening. And I had my spiritual awakening by doing these steps. If I'm not practicing these principles, if I'm not practicing steps 10 and 11 and then 12 every day, I can't expect any sponsees that I have to do these things if I'm not doing them myself. And so, it's really important for me to practice the principles in all my affairs. One misconception that I had, though, in doing this is that I had to be practicing these principles perfectly in all my affairs in order to carry the message. And I actually had a conversation with my sponsor not too long ago. I was about to take somebody through their 5th step, and I felt like I was going through a difficult time. And I felt like because I was going through a difficult time, I don't know, it was a very strange experience. All of a sudden I had all this anxiety and stuff like that. And I thought, I can't take this person through their 5th step because my life's not all together and everything's all screwed up. And my sponsor told me, when you feel like that, that is the perfect time to take somebody through the steps, to take somebody through their 5th step. So I don't have to perfectly practice the principles because nobody can do that. Like, nobody can 10th step perfectly. Nobody's, going to remember to do their 11th step every day. There are going to be times throughout the day where I forget to pause if I'm agitated. Like, I guarantee that because it happens all the time. Like, I always forget to pause. But the point is that I'm trying. The book says it's progress, not perfection, right? I'm never going to be perfect at these things. I think that's like the beauty of it because I can achieve and maintain sobriety and have these beautiful spiritual experiences while being this fallible human being, which I think is fabulous, and then carrying this message to alcoholics. Like I said, I did not think that this would be required of me. And I didn't necessarily understand. At first, I don't know why this got into my mind, but I felt like carrying this message to other alcoholics, practicing step 12 was doing things like volunteer work. And I know I'm the volunteer coordinator at the Magdalen House, but I always like to make the distinction when I take people through volunteer orientation that coming here and volunteering, like cleaning yoga mats, that's one of the things that I did when I first started going to Maggie's, is not 12-step work. It's service work, and it's really good to do. Like, it gets me out of my head. It makes me focused on other people, but it is not 12-step work. 12-step work is carrying the message to other alcoholics. 12-step work is meeting one-on-one with an alcoholic person. 12-step work is having a commitment, going to that commitment and just carrying the message. And it doesn't necessarily mean that, I'm always going to have sponsees. At this moment, I don't have any sponsees. What it means is that I am seeking out drunk women and trying to carry this message. When I first got sober, I know this is all over the place. I'm sorry if it's like.
No, it's so great.
Okay.
Yeah.
When I first got sober, and I started raising my hand, I actually went to carry the message at the treatment center that I went through, which was very strange because some of the people that I went through treatment with were still there. And so I was going back like as this recovered alcoholic when they saw me when I got to treatment, and I was, terrified and, I, just not knowing what the heck I was doing. So I came back to this treatment center and I was able to start carrying the message. And as soon as I raised my hand, the first week that I went back to carry the message there, I raised my hand. I didn't even speak, but 2 people approached me and asked me to sponsor them. And that was scary to me because I'm like, I didn't even say anything. Why do you want me to sponsor you? But looking back on it, and after having talked with my sponsor about it, she said, God probably thought you were going to get drunk, so he wanted to make you busy right away, And so taking those, talking to those women, I didn't take them all the way through the steps because they ended up dropping off, and not contacting me, which happens frequently. But, I had this, and I still do this like plan of action here in working with others that tells me exactly how I can talk to the newcomer. It tells me exactly what to do when I first meet with the person, my very first meeting. And then it tells me what to do in my second meeting with them. It tells me what to do if they have family. It tells me what to do if they have financial problems. So going into that and raising my hand for the first time and offering myself up for sponsorship, I had everything that I needed. And that's not to say that I didn't make mistakes, because I definitely made mistakes in especially my first few sponsees that I had, and I still make mistakes today. Like, I remember when I met with my first sponsee, I talked to her for way too long and was trying to convince her to do this program. That's not what I should have done. And I know that now, but it was a really great learning experience. And another really great learning experience was coming to terms with the fact that me making a mistake, or a sponsee dropping off the face of the earth, or a sponsee successfully working through all 12 steps, that is completely out of my control. I can't cause anyone to get drunk, and I can't cause anyone to get and stay sober. That is all God. My only responsibility is to carry this message to alcoholics and practice these principles in all my affairs. But when talking about carrying this message and feeling like it was not required of me, the more I read this book, the more sentences and paragraphs pop out that convince me otherwise, that it's a non-negotiable part of the program. It tells me on page 159, It says, though they knew they must help other alcoholics if they would remain sober, that motive became secondary. It was transcended by the happiness they found in giving themselves for others. So I must help alcoholics if I want to remain sober, if I'm an alcoholic of the hopeless variety. It also says on page 156, but life was not easy for the two friends. This is Bill and Bob. Plenty of difficulties presented themselves. Both saw that they must keep spiritually active. And I've noticed that's true for me in my own life, obviously. And I know the more experiences that I have as a sober person, the more this will ring true for me. I don't remember how long I had been sober. I was still under a year sober. And I know that because I was still riding the bus at that time. I was on the bus and I got a phone call from my mom letting me know that my dad was diagnosed with cancer. And I felt like the world was ending. Like I just did not know how to react to that. And I remember it was like an hour-long bus ride. Like I got off the phone and I had to sit and stew with that for an hour. And during that time, I didn't pray. I didn't know what to do, And so when I got home, when I got off the bus, I called my sponsor and was sobbing into the phone to her. And she really set me straight and basically said, you're making this about you. Go help somebody else. Go help an alcoholic. Pray about it. Go help another alcoholic. And so that's what I did. I got home and immediately got on the bus to Maggie's because that's what my sponsor told me to do. And I am grateful that she told me what I needed to do instead of what I wanted to hear. What I wanted to hear was, I'm so sorry. That's so tragic. Why don't you go take a nap or cry or eat some chocolate or whatever. What I didn't want to hear was go help another alcoholic, but that's exactly what I needed at that time, because otherwise I would have done exactly what I did in that entire bus ride home, which is think about myself, how sad this is for me. What am I going to do? How can I help my family? Stuff like that.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Because I do think it's important that you'd also share how you were able to help your family in that time. So do you mind talking about how like practicing principles and all your affairs and being recovered was able to put you in a situation to where you were able to be helpful to your family during that time?
Yeah. I mean, basically just, I think one of the biggest things was just asking God to just remove like my ego from the situation, because for some, I felt like this panic, how can I don't know. It's kind of strange. Like my dad is fine now. It was prostate cancer and he was able to have his prostate removed and everything. And so he's fine now. But like my big thing was, instead of like blowing up my family's phone, trying to like get continuous updates from them and freaking out about how my dad was, I was able to ask God to just like help me to live in that situation, just moment by moment and not future trip. And I think in that way, I was able to show up in a more like calm manner. I'm really good at freaking out and like catastrophizing. And I think a lot of us are really good at catastrophizing. And so just being able to ask God to just help me to just focus on the present moment, tell my family, whatever you need, I can do that for you. And it's also helped me. I feel like that particular experience has helped me to realize that no matter what differences I have with my family, because we're very different. I'm a lot different than a lot of members of my family, but that situation really helped to drive home the point of no matter what differences I have with my family, I can still show up as, a loving daughter, a loving sister. I don't have to get frustrated at you for believing in something that I don't believe or acting in a way that I don't want you to act. I can just be there. And so I think at that moment, I really realized that my family is more important to me than anything I think about them. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. For sure.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's a ton of different examples in the book about the necessity of going out and carrying the message to other people. And, you know, like I said, there's no way I can expect a sponsee to practice the principles in all their affairs if I'm not doing the same. One thing, I don't remember who said it. It might have been Lisa was talking about, or I don't know, it was somebody. They were talking about step 11, right? And I have a really difficult time with step 11. I'm not the kind of person who usually just sits down and relaxes and or like meditates and stuff like that. So that's been really difficult for me. And I've had to ask God for a lot of help in step 11. But what was said was I can't effectively do step 10 or step 12 if I'm not doing step 11. If I'm not practicing step 11, how can I expect to become aware of my thoughts and my actions throughout the day? If I'm not doing step 11, you know, how can I expect my sponsees, you know, to do step 11 when I'm not doing step 11? How can I carry the message effectively if I'm not relying on God throughout my day? And so that's like been a real big thing, especially lately for me, making sure that I'm doing what I can to make myself the most useful, and to carry the message the most effectively. So
I love that.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
So how long have you been sober?
A little more than 2.5 years.
Okay. Would you say that the way you sponsor at 2.5 years is the same way you sponsored at 2.5 months?
No, I mean, so at 2.5 months sober, I was under the impression that I could do something to cause somebody to get drunk. And so, or do something to cause somebody to get sober. I'm a real big people pleaser. So when I was, you know, first sponsoring women, I wanted my sponsees to like me. Like, you know, I think that we all like to feel liked, right? But I was definitely a big people pleaser, which is not helpful for my sponsees. If, you know, looking back on what my sponsor told me when my dad was diagnosed with cancer, if I responded to that situation at 2.5 months sober to a sponsee who was dealing with that same circumstance, I probably would have told her what she wanted to hear as opposed to what she should do in that situation. Or, you know, my sponsor even pointed me to the passage in the book where it talks about how we match calamity with serenity. So I don't know if I would have done that at 2 months sober. At 2.5 years sober, I am a little less focused on people pleasing. I still do it though. Like I still struggle with like wanting my sponsees to like me. And I even had a conversation with my sponsor not too long ago about how I did a 5th step with the sponsee and she never contacted me again. And my brain was telling me it's because I said something and she didn't like me anymore. Or like I offended her or something. And what my sponsor had to tell me is sponsees are sometimes not going to like you. Like sometimes you're going to be on their 5th step. And she used much more colorful language, but like basically sometimes my sponsees are going to call me names that might offend me, but it's, you know, I'm not here to be liked. I'm here to just do God's will, which is to help other alcoholics.
And I want to comment on that as well. Like I have my sponsees send me their nightlies, and I can probably count on 2 hands how many times I've been on their nightly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it always makes me laugh too. Because like I know, like, and because I know that like they love me and I love them, and clearly like they have enough like trust in me that they feel comfortable putting me on their nightly knowing that I'm going to read it, you know. And it also shows too at this point, you know, hopefully they've been doing the work long enough that if they are resentful, they realize that it's something in them, not in me. Because just like when I'm resentful, there's something in me, either fear or selfishness or something that's driving that resentment, and then they can hopefully realize the same thing in them too. So yes, that is absolutely 100% true. And I have experience with that for sure. I also have experience with too, like, with whenever because I had your experience where like I would have trouble telling sponsees like what they like needed to hear versus what they wanted to hear. And something that like I always tell the women I sponsor is like sometimes the most kind and loving thing that you can do is like the hardest thing that you can do, right? Like sometimes like telling someone the truth and what they don't want to hear is like the most kind and loving thing you can do, rather than like sugarcoating something and telling them like, something that won't hurt their feelings or something like that. And when I started doing that, I started getting fired a lot more frequently than I ever did before. And like having to realize that like that wasn't anything personal, right? That was just, I had been so used to like that not happening because I never really like, I don't know how to explain it. You understand what I'm saying, right, Kelly?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like just recently that switch flipped in my head where I realized that if I tiptoe around my sponsees, I am not doing them any favors. If I say, well, you can go to this meeting if you want, or, we can, it's fine that you didn't go to this or whatever. That's a big thing, is like me saying like, you need to have a commitment, you need to have a home group and stuff like that. I realized that me kind of being wishy-washy on that was just, it's not helping them, and because it wouldn't have helped me, because I remember back when, I first asked my sponsor to sponsor me, she told me, these are the meetings you are going to go to. I realized I hadn't been doing that. And so I realized, just recently that I need to, kind of change my tactic, because that's how my sponsor sponsored me. And I want to be able to do the same for other women. So, but yeah, I remember there was a point in time where I was sponsoring this woman and she wouldn't do anything that I asked her to do. And so it was really difficult, but like, I basically had to tell her, like, if you're not willing to do what I did, if you're not willing to do whatever it takes, I don't want you to think that like you're not doing the steps if you're not willing to do, what it is, whatever, I didn't want her, thinking that she was doing the steps and that I was sponsoring her if she wasn't doing anything out of the book or anything that I asked her to do. So, and then she did end up drinking again. And, me at 2.5 months sober, I would have thought that I caused her to get drunk. But at that point, I think I was like a year sober. And I realized that she just needed to really experience her step one again,
Yeah,
so yeah.
Absolutely. And like my sponsor, like really like kind of like hones in on me that like you always want to leave yourself in a position to be helpful later. And so like, I feel like it's important to like always tell your sponsees the truth, but you can always deliver it in a way that they can hear it. And like somebody may need something like more of a really like blunt delivery, where like other people might need it to be more on the softer side, but either way, like you're still telling them the truth. Mm-hmm. And like my sponsor's really she's helped me with that a lot, because like you always want to remain in a place to be helpful later. And like, letting them know that, if you do relapse, it's not because the 12 steps don't work or there's not a higher power out there. It's that you're being closed-minded to the direction that I'm giving you and unwilling to take the action. Whenever you are willing and you are open-minded, like I'm totally here for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I've had that experience too. Definitely.
Yeah. I remember one of the things, like I definitely approach different sponsees differently, depending on the situation, and so, yeah, I completely agree with you. Mm-hmm.
Are you or someone you know struggling with the inability to stop drinking? At the Magdalen House, we believe that alcoholic women deserve a place to recover with dignity. In our 2-week residential program, clients will be introduced to what alcoholism is and what alcoholism isn't, as well as be presented with the solution, all in a loving and supportive environment. All of our programs are offered at absolutely no cost, and because we accept no government money, we can accept women all over the world and stick to our own curriculum. If you want to stop drinking and cannot, call 214-324-9261 for a phone screen.
Now, I think it's important to talk about, because, you know, you've had the same sponsor for 2.5 years, which is not everybody's experience. It doesn't have to be your experience, but like you have a lot of like trust in your sponsor, and like you did what she told you to do. And so, you know, like by taking that direction, it worked, right? And I think one of the things that's important to talk about, I don't really know if this has to do with 12-step work or not, but I think I just learned this about you, to kind of like how willing you were in the beginning. I mean, I'm sure you're still just as willing today, but do you mind talking about that? Like what you did in your early recovery?
Yeah. Yeah, I was, like I said, you know, I was desperate. And, you know, I was in this 30-day treatment center, and I realized when my sponsor came in and carried the message with one other woman, and she talked to the whole group of us. And I realized when she described like the nature of alcoholism, how it's, my body and my mind are essentially trying to kill me. You know, I have an allergy to alcohol, and I have a mind that keeps telling me that I don't. And so when that was explained to me, I realized that, you know, I was screwed. You know, I realized that when I got out of treatment, I was going to drink. It wasn't like, I might not drink, or, if I get my apartment, I'm not going to drink. Or if I get my dog back, I'm not going to drink. It was, I am going to drink no matter what. And I remember having that moment of clarity. And the weird thing is that it like faded, right? And so I'm really grateful that I was in a 30-day treatment facility, because my sponsor kept coming back and talking to me. There was one point where I ended up moving into sober living when I got out of treatment. I did not want to. Like every fiber of my being did not want to go into sober living, because I had a dog, right? I had 2 cats and 2 dogs when I went into treatment, and I had to give 3 of those away. So I just had the 1 dog left. And my priority was to live with my dog, because I love my dog. But what my sponsor told me was, your dog's going to get you drunk, because I was putting my dog above my sobriety. And when she said that, I got real mad at her. I was like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. My dog is awesome. And But the longer I sat on that, the more I realized, yeah, my dog was going to get me drunk. So I moved into sober living, because I realized I wouldn't be able to get an apartment anyway, because I had no work history, and I don't even know, I had a driver's license, but I thought it was suspended at that time. But yeah, so my sponsor, I moved into sober living. My sponsor gave me this list of meetings that I had to go to. I didn't have a car, and this meeting would have taken me like 2 hours to get to. But she told me to go to this meeting. And so I did. I went to that meeting. I rode the bus. It was a bus and a train, and I had to walk. I had to walk for like 40 minutes. And I did that on Tuesdays and Thursdays. My home group is on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I went to both days when I got sober. My sponsor also told me, whatever job you get, you have to make time for these commitments. And so when I started applying for a job, it was, I cannot work on these days no matter what, which was really difficult for me to do, because, I needed a job. I didn't have a job, but I knew that from what my sponsor told me, I knew that God will provide for me what I need if I keep close to him and do his work, and so that's what I did. And I ended up getting a job that allowed me to go to those commitments and those meetings. I also really did not want to carry the message. I didn't want to talk to people. I was terrified, but my sponsor told me that I needed to do that. And so I did that. There was only one time, or I don't know, it was actually probably more than one time, but one time that I remember where I argued with my sponsor about how I didn't want to do something. And I was being real coy. And my Oxford house, which was the sober living I was in, was having, the toilet was broken. And I was like, I know how to fix that. I've fixed toilets before. And so I called my sponsor and I said, hey, I can't go to this commitment tonight because I have to fix this toilet. And she's like, Kelly, she laughed at me. And she said, that's bull. Like, fix the toilet later. You're going to this commitment. And I got real mad with her. And I was like, oh, gosh, I guess I'm going to this commitment. So on my way to the commitment, I realized I was being dishonest with her. So I called her and I made amends. But, I ended up doing the thing that I needed to do. There was one occasion where she told me, she said, you suck at following directions, don't you? And I was like, oh. But that's what I needed to hear. She's really good at being blunt with me and telling me what I need to hear, like what I need to do.
And that it comes from a place of
oh,
love,
absolutely.
Clearly, otherwise she still would not be your sponsor today.
Absolutely. Yeah. I owe so much to her. But yeah, in the beginning and now I will do whatever it takes.
Can I say something? I just wanted to, as you were talking and you were talking about, like walking 40 minutes to this meeting and like getting a job and having your job work around your commitments. But then just earlier you were talking about how you could be wishy-washy on a home group and having your sponsees have a home group and a commitment. But yet whenever you were sober, like you did so much to be able to like do those things, and so I don't know, I just
absolutely. And it took that moment of that switch flipping and realizing I wasn't doing any favors to my sponsees. I recalled those moments, so much was asked of me and really wasn't that much, but so much was asked of me, and I needed to do so many things in order to achieve and maintain my sobriety and to have that spiritual awakening. It would be unfair of me to make exceptions for other people just because I want them to like me. Like that's dishonest,
I have a question.
Yeah.
If your sponsor would have said, hey, this is a great meeting, you can go to it if you want to, would you have gone to it? Would you have walked 40 minutes to go to it if she said you could go to it if you want to?
I would like to say that yes, I would have, because I was so desperate, but I know that later on in my sobriety, like 6 months sober, I probably would have remembered that and said, well, she told me I don't have to go. So
yeah.
And that's one of the great things about working with sponsees is when you start working with somebody, you remember that desperation that you had, and so every once in a while I forget that, but then I get a new sponsee and I'm able to take them through, the steps. And I remember how desperately I needed something to change, and how completely powerless I felt. It's always a good reminder to me. Yeah. That reminds me too, when I first started going through the steps, I was told I wouldn't have to read the stories in the back because the program of action is in the first 164 pages. But then I went to my home group and they started reading one of the stories, which is Dr. Bob's Nightmare. And I was like, hey, you told me we wouldn't have to read this. But I'm really grateful because I actually really identify with Dr. Bob. I am more of a literal person, and Bill's story is a little too like flowery for me. And so I really like Dr. Bob's Nightmare. And there's one on page 181. He lists out the reasons why he talks to other alcoholics. And it's it's on page 181. It says 1, a sense of duty. And so like, that's what this program requires of me. And so I do it. So that's my first reason. 2, it's a pleasure. Even when I don't want to go and carry the message, because there are those times, like I'm not always excited to like after work, have to go right straight over to the 2-4. But every time I leave, I'm glad that I did it because I get to meet new people. I get to talk to other drunks. I get to go over steps 1, 2, and 3, stuff like that. Number 3 is because in doing so, I'm paying my debt to the woman who took time to pass it on to me. I would not be sober if someone did not tell me about the problem and the solution and use their experience to carry that message to me. And then 4, because every time I do it, I take out a little more insurance for myself against a possible slip. So when the book says, when all else fails, intensive work with another alcoholic will save the day. I'm paraphrasing because I'm not very good at memorizing things in the big book. But yeah, like those 4 reasons pretty much sum up like why I do this. I really like Dr. Bob's Nightmare. It's a good chapter.
You want to know a secret?
Yeah.
I've never read it.
You should read it. It's a little bit more boring than Bill's story.
I've never read it because it's not in the first 164 pages.
I know. And I felt like so betrayed when my home group's like, all right, we're starting on Dr. Bob's Nightmare. And I'm like, are you kidding
I
me?
felt so betrayed.
I feel betrayed.
No, I know. I need to read it. Like I really, really do, you know.
Yeah, that's the only story I've read in the big. I'm not a reader. And so it's the only story I read.
He's one of our founders. Like I should definitely read it, but
All good.
I'm so selfish. I'm like, I don't need to read that. You know, what am I going to do? Just read it in my spare time, you know?
Yeah, whenever you've got any free time you might have.
Yeah. But no, now like I feel like I have to for sure. Well, so I wanted to ask you, one of the questions that we would ask in Next Step is, are you currently sponsoring? Like, do you have any active sponsors? Are you actively sponsoring? Like, do you have any sponsees? And if so, like, what are you doing for them? Mm-hmm. And the reason why we say that, and I preface that is because like, if like it says intensive work with another alcoholic, right? Like that's like, this work is supposed to be intensive. So if I have somebody who is like referring to me as their sponsor, but I'm never talking to that woman, we're not doing any work, like she's like calls me maybe like, you know, occasionally whenever like she wants to put out a fire or something, at that point, like she's just using me as a sponsor by name, but I'm also using her as a sponsee by name. And so it's like, I have to look at that. Am I actually sponsoring her because like for God, or like, am I allowing her to use me as a quote unquote sponsor so I can feel good about sponsoring? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's like, so it's like, that's not intensive work with another alcoholic, which is one of the reasons why we ask the women that question. And if they don't have any sponsees, what we ask them, Patrice, right? We ask all these questions still?
Yes, we do.
All right, cool. Is, you know, what are you doing to pursue sponsees? And so I would just like you, if you could just like share your experience with the listeners or Next Step participants or something, like what are some things that you do to search out sponsees?
Well, I mean, that's the big thing is searching out sponsees. Like I don't expect drunk women to come to me, right? Because that's not what, you know, I didn't do that really. My sponsor came to me. She came to my treatment center to share the message, right? So I need to actually go and seek out potential sponsees or seek out just a drunk woman to talk to. She doesn't even have to go to me. She doesn't have to go with me as like her sponsor. You know, because I've had sponsees who end up finding somebody else that they connect with more, but I'm grateful for that because I was still able to take them through some of the steps and they were still able to get connected to another sponsor. So what I am doing personally is I make myself available. Yesterday, I got a text from a friend asking, am I available for sponsorship? And if so, can she give my number away? And my response immediately was absolutely. I don't have any sponsees right now. And so I am actively searching for sponsees. I have a commitment that I go to, which is real close to my work, which is very handy. But I know that I can go there on just more than the day that I go there to carry the message, right? Like I don't smoke anymore, but I've got a pack of cigarettes that I can, you know, go and share with another woman that I find and just talk to her about, you know, about what her experience is. And I think just the big thing is like just actively searching for somebody to help. Because if I'm just passive and expect people to call me or text me or come up to me after carrying the message, it's not really going to get me that far, right? I have control over that in my life. So that's essentially what I'm doing, you know? And then also just making sure that I am like living these steps in my daily life, I have to make the program look attractive, right? So if I'm, you know, acting one way when I'm carrying the message and then, you know, at my job, I'm just like a terror, or in my home, I'm, you know, or on my drive home, I'm cussing people out, you know, that's going to reflect in like how I show up to sponsees. So I need to make sure that, I am practicing these principles and making this like a more attractive option for them, you know, and then also just having fun, because the book says that we're not a glum lot. If we were, this wouldn't be attractive to drunks. And that's what attracted me to the program. Was my sponsor was happy and sober, which was weird to me. But that was like a huge thing that attracted me to doing this work, was that you could be happy and sober at the same time. And I was like, I don't know. I don't completely trust that this will work for me, but I sure hope it does, because I want what you have. So just making myself somebody that someone wants what I have. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I love that so much. What would you say is like some of the greatest gifts besides staying sober, that 12-step work has given you?
Oh, there's so many, but a big one is, that being able to match calamity with serenity, just having a peace about like my daily life. No matter what is happening, I know that my higher power is in control and that I am not in control, which before I started this work would have freaked me out, because I thought, I need to be in control. But me being in control is what got me into treatment, right? So me not having to be in control is an awesome gift that this program has given me, because when I'm in control, I screw things up. So my higher power being in control, knowing that every day. Let's see, what else? Having the tools that I need to go throughout the day to recognize like when I'm not feeling right, or when something is not going my way, or when people seem unhappy with me, being able to pause and reflect on that situation and kind of see like what's going on, like what are my character defects, am I trying to control the show? And then also having a community of sober women to surround myself with has been awesome. I did not have any friends, and I did not want any friends. And doing this work and being like submersed in this community of strong, sober women has given me so much hope and has provided me with so many different perspectives. Like even in my time just working at the Magdalen House, I've heard so many like good little nuggets of information that have really helped me in my sobriety. So just, being able to hear people's, experience and listening to what they know and what they did. And I don't know, it's been cool. A lot of cool things.
That's how I feel like with doing the podcast too, for sure. Like I just get to like hear constantly like things that inspire me and things that I can use to be helpful to others. And like if I didn't do this podcast, like I feel like I would like miss out on all this cool information and cool experience, like the stuff that you've shared today. Do you mind reading the 12-step promises on page 89?
Yeah, girl.
And then I'm going to have you do something else too, but that's going to be the first thing.
Okay. So on page 89, working with others, life will take on new meaning, to watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. We know you will not want to miss it. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives.
Awesome. So whenever you were talking about like how you used to not have any friends and all that stuff, like it was just that's like immediately what I was thinking of is like the 12-step promises, like being true in your life today, which Absolutely. I thought was absolutely beautiful. The other thing that I would like for you to do is your experience with step 12 reminds me of a line in the book that you read earlier. I believe it's on page 159. Can you read that again? I could be wrong. It might be on page 157.
Oh, yeah. Just that line that I read.
Mm-hmm.
Though they knew they must help other alcoholics if they would remain sober, that motive becomes secondary. It was transcended by the happiness they found in giving themselves for others.
So the reason why I had you read that line is because before I used to read that line, just read that line. It's a really great line. But around like, I would say 3 years sober, between 2 and 4 years sober, my son's father pointed out that it said that motive became secondary, right? Mm-hmm. So like in the beginning, your motive to help others was that like you were desperate, right? Because you were saying how scared you were, you weren't going to do it, but like you did it because you knew you had to do it to stay sober, and like how like desperate you were. But now like that motive has been outweighed by like all of the gifts that you've given or that you've been given, and how like great 12-step work is. And so I just thought that line was like just a really good, I guess, like what's where I'm looking for, like example of your experience with step 12.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because when I first started doing this, it did feel like I was literally just doing what my sponsor told me to do so that I could stay sober. And now I realize the value in helping others in my life, which is no matter what I am going through, I know that me going and carrying the message to others will help me no matter what, even when I first, during the pandemic, I was caring for my uncle who's severely disabled. So I literally just saw one person for like a year and a half. Right. And then when I first started working at Maggie's, all of a sudden I was surrounded by people all day, every day, which was lovely. But at the same time, it was stressful. And so I knew, on Wednesdays, I go to the 2-4, and I look forward to that now because that's a place where I can share, it relieves me of all of the stress that I have throughout the day. It's weird. I never thought that, because carrying the message used to stress me out. Now it's like I do this when I feel upset, which is backwards. I thought it would be backwards, in early sobriety, but it's very helpful. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Well, this has been really beautiful and helpful. I hope you had a good time. I had a lot of fun.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I was nervous.
No, it was so fun. It was great. Do you have any parting words before we head out?
No, just do the steps. Just do what your sponsor says, even if you feel like a load of, what. Just do it.
And you're a perfect example of somebody doing what their sponsor says and getting the results of that. So even if you felt like it was, what.
You put that in the podcast so that she hears that.
Oh, for sure. Pat, we're talking to you. All right. You have a wonderful day. I'll see you at work.
All right. Sounds good.
Bye.
Bye.
We hope you've enjoyed this From the Vault re-release of the Magdalen House podcast. Tune in every first and third Wednesday for a new release from one of our 3 podcast series. To learn more about the Magdalen House and the services we offer, visit magdalenhouse.org or follow us on your favorite social media channels by searching for the Magdalen House.